I'm sure some of you have seen me before. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, and thank you to Ivan for being our speaker of today. I know it's been a very tough period of time for everyone, and I hope that each of you and your family are all well and safe. The purpose of today's webinar is to share our insights about the Hong Kong contracting market and to be as interactive as possible with our audience and every single one of you. So I'll start by having a morning warm-up exercise. I'll pull up 2 cool questions and just to get to know a little bit about our audience and what's happening in the contracting market. Tony, can you please pull out 2 cool questions, please?
Sure, everyone on your screen now, you should see a poll question has just popped up, which is a 2-part question. 1, have you hired contractors before? Which I think will give us some insight into some of the questions you might have today. And secondly, which sector do you work in? Is it financial services or a commercial sector outside of financial services? So 50% of you have voted, and I'm just going to give it a little bit more time. It looks like we have many people here today who have hired contractors.
Yay, perfect.
It's always great to see. And it looks about half-half for financial services commerce. I'm just going to give it 10 more seconds. If you could just answer those questions. Okay, let's call it a close. And I'm just going to share those results up on the screen now. Okay, so the answers were 77% have hired contractors, with the remainder have not in the past. And it's about half-half, with about 44% of you working within the financial services industry, and the remaining 56% outside in a commercial area.
Wow, this is very good result. I'm glad that majority of you guys have hired contractors before. So I'm sure Ivan and I will share more insights about the contracting market and what's happening within the contracting market right now. Thank you, Tony. Let's go right into our first slide. Yeah, so there are 3 different types of contingent workforce in Hong Kong. I'm going to talk about every one of them. The first one being a temp contract, which are the contract under an employment agency such as michaelpage. The second employment contract we've seen is a direct contract directly hired by our client. The employment is under our client. And the third employment contract will be consultancies or secondment services, where a consultancy firm that offers professional typically will pay a lump sum upfront, and the consultancy firm will provide human resources to the company. So some clients will hire 3 in the same organization, whereas some clients will hire just 1 or 2 type of contracts, depending on their business needs and depending on the suitability of the clients. In the next slide, I know some of you always ask me about the active hiring trends and disciplines in Hong Kong. We've seen an increasing trend in technology, particularly, and financial services. So for technology, we've seen a lot of our clients hiring for project managers, business analysts, as well as technical programmer people. .NET, Java, these are all very hot, active programming languages in demand. Some of our clients are using new systems, changing their new core banking systems such as T24. That's why we hire a lot of contractors within the same area. And in financial services, with increasing demand in regulatory people, we've seen more and more of KYC, customer service, compliance people in the industry. With Basel III and a lot of new tighter regulations coming up, we've also seen more and more audit and compliance people. So for finance, we've seen because of maternity leave, project-based hirings, change of new systems from one system to another system, increasingly clients are looking for finance contractors as well. Secretarial, HR, these are all very high demand trends. Particularly in HR, a lot of the HR business partners are partnering with different units, finding the right talent as well as looking into cost savings and different restructuring or bringing value to the firm kind of exercise. In digital marketing, earlier this year, we've seen more and more clients looking to digitalize their platforms, whether it's in banking, investment banking, or even commercial, luxury retail, or pharmaceutical companies. Ivan, have you seen the trend in active hiring since State Street? What are the key trends?
Well, I think the key trends within State Street for the previous years have been looking to hire more top quality candidates in the areas of strategic thinking, because in recent years, State Street has offshored a lot of the roles into lower cost centers, such as India and China, where they'll take on more processing positions. But the sort of responsibilities of the regional lead office will be more high level management executives who would like to hire temporary staff to help them with those processes and managing offshore teams.
Yep. Now moving on to the demand for temps. 7 years ago, when I first started the contracting team, I was one-man band doing all the contract hirings in Hong Kong, from financial services to secretarial to technology. I was a one-man band. Now, fast forward 7 years later, we've got a team of 16 dedicated consultants, which I'm proud to say we have the biggest contracting team in Hong Kong. So in terms of demand, definitely we've seen a huge increase in demand in contract or temporary workforce in Hong Kong. So the reason for hiring, Ivan, why would you guys hire temps?
Well, I think firstly, you have to look at it from a business point of view. From business leaders, it makes more sense. One, because during volatile markets, they're able to set a deadline or set a definite date as to when a contractor will expire and how long they want to engage with the particular contractor for, and also well defining the actual achievements or the responsibilities during that period. So I think when it comes to workforce management, it makes more sense, and also it allows the finance team within each businesses to control the costs much better. Of course, having a set defined period of time, you're able to, for example, choose not to further extend the contractor, or whether you want to extend the assignment further, or you might want to reallocate this headcount or this temp resource to another department because probably you like this person a lot, and maybe in the future, if you want to convert this person to make this person a member of staff of the company, that also is an option for you. So it offers greater flexibility for businesses during volatile markets, such as right now.
Definitely. And I've outlined a couple of very key reasons why our clients are hiring temps right now and the increase in demand over the past years. So first of all, definitely project-based. A lot of our temp hirings are project-based. Some companies will come to us and say, we need to hire 10 people within this particular time. Or if it's a maternity leave cover, then they'll come to us and say, oh, okay, this candidate is going on maternity leave next month. We need this person to be on board this month so that there's a transition period. Also, very often we've seen no perm headcounts, no perm budget, especially during current situation where we have a lot of uncertainties where headquarters is not based in Hong Kong. They might want to look into different flexible solutions to hire people. Another thing we've seen, which is very interesting to me, is urgent hires. We've seen more and more clients saying that, hi Angela, I want to hire a temp and I want the temp to start tomorrow. So what we've done over the past year is we've done something that's called start no interview. So basically our clients have been working with us for a long time, and they trusted us that if they want a candidate to start tomorrow, they don't need to interview the candidate. They just say, hey Angela, I want a temp to start tomorrow. Can you have the temp to start at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Then it's going to be a try before you buy. So this is very useful for some of the very urgent hires. Typically, it could be more support, entry-level roles, data admin kind of positions. And some clients would hire a bulk hire of like 5 to 10 people, depending on the size of the project. We've also supported multiple banks, multiple commercial firms on volume hire, just because they've got a new system launch, new implementation. We've also helped a couple of investment banks on graduate trainee hires on the contract position. So one of our key clients in their private banking team, they were looking for assistant relationship managers, but because in the market there are not a lot of existing candidate pool, so we suggested to our client that they should offer hiring 5 to 10 graduate trainees to replace assistant relationship managers who are the experienced side. So we've run that program for 2 years and it has been a great success. Majority of the candidates have been converted to permanent as well. And I think one of the clients that I've hired with the line managers is on this call. So thanks for joining the webinar. Now moving on to supply of temps in Hong Kong. Like I said, I started a team 7 years ago. Back in the days when I was calling candidates for contract roles, 1 out of 20 will say yes. Now, I think 1 out of 10 will say yes, particularly given the current economic situation. People are quite cautious with the unemployment rate of 5.2%. People would really love to get into the market and have a job as soon as possible. So in terms of the challenges when hiring a good temp, Ivan, can you share your thoughts on the key challenges when hiring a good temp worker?
Well, absolutely. Of course, from the candidate's point of view, a position in the company as temporary worker may sound inferior to them. So therefore, as a hiring manager, this person really have to think on the candidate's point of view. And in my position, that's my job, to hear the business needs from the manager and also give some market insight as to how we can make the job more enticing for the market, and before we release the requisition to suppliers such as yourself, Angela. I think the key challenges that we have observed from hiring managers is finding someone who's a cultural fit to the team. And of course, the hiring process for a temp is less rigorous than a permanent position when it comes to, let's say, the sourcing period, and also when it comes to screening process. When it comes to sourcing, the candidate pool for temp sometimes may be a bit, how should I say this, may not meet 100% of the criteria, because the requisition needs to be filled ASAP. So therefore, the suppliers naturally have less time to source for a better candidate. Now, I'm not saying the candidates are bad. I'm just saying that it might not fit 100% of the criteria of the manager's expectations. Having said that, from the hiring manager's point of view as well, when it comes to the screening process, when they're going through interviews, when they're seeing candidates, there are less stages because they don't want to spend as much time interviewing candidates as they would normally for perm role. So the type of questions that's going to be asked is going to be less focused on personality traits, but more on the actual soft skills or experiences, because they want the person to hit the ground running. And during those scenarios, you're going to have issues with candidates coming to work. And finally, when it comes to fitting with the current team and the culture of the environment of the organization, those are the things that probably are pain points, I would say, initially when hiring a temp. Second thing I would like to say about hiring a temp, the challenges is actually finding the right motivations, and also understanding whether the candidate has been falsely set an expectation that after the assignment there's going to be some sort of conversion or extension towards the end. So those are the things that hiring managers like to iron out, at the very get-go during the interview procedure. So they will say that this is a 6-month assignment only. There is a possibility of it being extended. There's business needs. So hiring managers, we advise them to set that tone from the very beginning to ensure there's no false expectation when the person starts. To eliminate the chances of people leaving because they feel the role is not what they expected. Yeah, so I say those are the things that are top challenges for me that comes to mind.
Thank you, Ivan. Thanks for sharing. And typically, how long does it take to hire the perfect temp in Hong Kong?
Well, I think globally, we worked out the average to be 45 days, and this is global. But for Hong Kong, since we have a very good panel of recruiters,
Thank you, Ivan.
The average time for us is about 30 days. And this clock is from the very first day when we have released a requisition to our suppliers, and until the day where the worker sets foot in the door. Now, having said that, of course, the prerequisite is having the candidate to be immediately available. So if the manager chooses to wait, that would make it very clear when we release the rec. But sometimes if the manager is willing to wait, then the clock might be longer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And what are the key consideration factors for candidates to take on a temp role?
Well, I think from the candidate's point of view, like I mentioned, it might come across as something that's inferior because their concerns would be a role may not be offering the sort of right benefits in terms of medical coverage or annual leave entitlement and so on. But I think in recent years, since the day that I've been in recruitment, the temp market in Hong Kong has actually increased in terms of the benefits it brings to the contractors compared to 8 years ago or 5 years ago. So I think, and those sort of aspects, the candidate can be rest assured that those concerns are covered. And also from the client's point of view, because they want to be competitive to pull the right candidate from the market. So they realize these benefits are additional burdens that the candidates might see. So they've also increased those benefits to ensure that it's more aligned with the market. And also, when considering a role as a candidate's point of view, they might actually see it as a perk. Like you mentioned, that it offers them great exposure. We've definitely seen that when we interview candidates, or when we release rec. Candidates are willing to take on a temp role because they realize that during a 6 month assignment or 1 year assignment, they'll probably get exposure that they wouldn't get in a permanent role, because within the permanent role, the company or an employer might think about how they will progress or how they will develop the individual and over for a stretch period of time. But within the assignment, especially Stage 3, the hiring managers are very willing to teach candidates or workers who are willing to take on more responsibilities as they see fit. So I definitely feel that for individuals who are looking for better exposure, a temp role is definitely something that they would definitely highly consider, especially during this market right now.
Definitely. It's very interesting how you shared that a lot of the companies are now trying to align to the permanent benefits. Now, about 4 years ago, we were supporting one of the very key banks in Hong Kong, and they were offering 7 days of annual leave, no medical benefits, no sick leave, and whatsoever. It's basically very minimal benefits for contractors. And moving to 2 years later, they were like, Angela, we couldn't find any candidates. Well, I said, because you guys are not offering what the market is offering. So even for a temp, I understand from a cost saving perspective, everything should be minimal, 7 days, no, nothing. But in reality, if other banks or other companies are offering more than just the minimal, it is hard for us to find candidates in the market. So now the bank is offering 15 days of annual leave, medical benefits, paid sick leave, etc. So I think that the contracting market is definitely evolving, and we are trying to match what our the current market practice has done. And I'm really appreciating that the fact that a lot of our clients come to us and ask us, are we up to the market standard? If not, then what are the key benefits, or what are the things that we need to do in order to be more competitive? Whether it's adding a gratuity bonus towards the end, or whether it is giving out more annual leave, or even discretionary bonus, or even a title change. These are some of the things that could be able to attract temp candidates. Now, Ivan, when candidates have multiple offers, both temps and perm, how would you sell the candidate to take on your role, your temp role?
Well, I think it comes down to motivation of the individual. If the candidate is interviewing elsewhere and they have perm positions in hand, I think it goes back to the very point of motivation and also exposure they're looking for. Are they fishing around? Are they actually looking for something serious? Are they looking for career progression? Reminding you, if you're working in a permanent role, if you are in the company for 3 or 4 years, the salary increment will probably be what? A market adjustment, probably 2 to 3%, maybe 5%. But if you're taking on a position within an assignment as temporary staff, let's say, for example, your assignment finishes in 1 year, and then there's another offer for you to progress in another opportunity, you're bound to ask for more than 5% as your uptake, right? So therefore, in terms of salary-wise, it's actually beneficial for you to take on an assignment as a temporary staff, and then probably look at something greater afterwards, because within that 1 year or 6 months, you probably get great exposure as you would compared to being in a perm position where it's more stable. So it really depends on what the individual is looking for, stability-wise, permanent role. But if you're looking for something more of exposure, then temp role is where to go.
Definitely. So looking back at our slide, we've got a lot of people who will be interested in temp role. First of all, immediately available candidates who will definitely be considering a temp position. People who are already on another contract positions will be the contractors that we target. So in michaelpage, we actually have a book of candidates who are already contracting with our competitors. So we have a short list of all the candidates who are already contractors in our market, and we could call them up and say, hey, are you interested in another contract position? Permanent candidates, like what Ivan suggested, even though they're permanent candidates, but because of the project exposure, because of a new opportunity, new changing industry opportunity, then they will be happy to take on a contract role. some of the candidates I've seen nowadays are some people who have retired. These are more interim CIO, CEO kind of level, and they still want to go back into the market and pick up a more consultant or interim CEO, CIO, COO positions. And of course, some people will be out of the market. So like we said, we were hiring maternity leave cover candidates. And of course, there will be candidates who just finished their maternity leave and they want to go back to the market. So these are all the key candidates who we are targeting. So I see that some of you are falling asleep. So we will bring up our next poll question. Tony, please, thank you.
Sure, I'm just gonna put that up on everybody's screen now. So we've got a second set of questions. The first of which is, which discipline are you working in? We've got a number of options for you to choose from there. And then the second is, given the current global economic situation, do you see an increase in temp hiring in your company? Okay, so the results have started to come in. We've got about a quarter of you answering so far. It looks like we have a lot of people working within HR joining us today, over 60%. And it looks like about 35% are saying that they will increase their temp hiring due to the global economic situation, COVID-19, etc. So we've got about half of you have voted. I'm just going to give it another 10 seconds. So just put in your final vote. Also, thank you for everyone who's put in a question in the Q&A. We'll get to those shortly. And feel free to enter in some more questions. Okay, let's wrap up the poll. And I'm just going to share those results.
Wow.
So as you can see, about 60% are joining from HR, but we've got a number of other areas: accounting, finance, technology, secretarial, and keen to find out later the other 12%. And it looks about like 35% of our participants today, and we have over 100 participants at the moment, are going to increase their temp hiring, with about 38% no and about 27% unsure. So we'll see if we can't help you with that later on.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting result. Yeah, definitely. I've got more and more clients asking me about contract hirings or flexible workforce arrangement, etc. So it's good to see that people are thinking about hiring contractors or thinking about different solutions to help out in the organization. Now, moving on to the next slide, I'm going to... Yeah, so I'm going to have a proper interview with Ivan with his experience in the APAC contingency workforce. I'm sure he would be able to bring us some insights in the contracting market. So what temp hiring trends do you see in APAC in the next 5 years, Ivan?
So right now it's in a very tricky and interesting situation where, like I mentioned, in previous years, companies have been looking into offshoring roles from high cost centers to lower cost centers. But I think as we see this current pandemic, a new normal has come into play, where businesses have re-strategized and looking into how to bring the best value with the current workforce. Now, with those sort of key items in mind, we are starting to see some roles being onshored back to where it's supposed to be. And those business managers have decided to hire temps because they're not sure how long this pandemic is going to go on for.
Yeah.
And of course, they want to maintain that sort of service quality that they're offering to their clients, especially with a place like Stage 3, where they're a financial service provider, they have SOAs to follow with the clients. They want to uphold the SOA to ensure that the clients get the best services. So there are returning contractors or returning permanent staff who are taking on temp positions with Stage 3 to add those value to those individual business units. So I definitely see probably in the next 2 years that will happen, until this pandemic really settles down. But until then, it's really hard to say. Or businesses might look into even lower cost centers within the APAC region, or even look into new markets where as more, but there are new clients, or probably potential clients of theirs, lurking into countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and those countries. So we definitely see more trends spiking in those countries in Southeast Asia.
Great to hear. And what benefits does it bring to hire a temp over a perm from the business perspective?
Well, I think, like I mentioned about flexibility, it makes more sense business-wise to have a definite duration to hire or engage with the actual vendor to hire temp. And I think it's the liability. When you're looking to hire temp, the employment sort of liability is shifted to a supplier like yourself, where the hiring manager or the HR team doesn't have to worry about, for example, when it comes to medical schemes, when it comes to, for example, annual leave tracking, when it comes to, for example, sick leave entitlements and sick leave management and performance management even. So a lot of those aspects of HR administration is offloaded to the supplier. And of course, in hiring a temp, like from my point of view as a client, when I hire a temp, I expect the recruiter or the supplier to have very regular touch point with the contractor to ensure the contractor is satisfied in their roles. If they're not, then they come to me and I'll escalate to their managers if there's something that needs to be addressed. So therefore, there is actually more touch point in terms of the overall satisfaction of the worker when it comes to interaction than over a perm. A perm staff might get the opportunity probably once a month when they have a catch up with the managers. So therefore, I think overall satisfaction level and also in terms of the touch points with contractors is less than a perm staff, but at the same time, you're getting a better quality. And also the hiring speed. When I'm releasing a role to, let's say, Angela, I expect the role to be filled within 30 days. And that probably can't be said for perm because the restriction of background checks is more rigorous. With Stage 3, a temp can start prior to the background check has been totally cleared. So it's still ongoing when a temp worker has commenced, and then we can ongo those investigations if needed. But so therefore, from the manager's point of view, there's definitely many benefits of hiring a temp.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. And why would you use agencies and not direct hire or hiring by yourselves?
Well, I think it goes back to the point of liability. So when I'm engaging with an agency like yourself to hire a temp, like I mentioned, I'm expecting minimal effort when it comes to HR administration. I'm totally relying on you, and also you're my experts. I rely on you in terms of telling me what's going on with the market. And when I let's say release a rec, you can tell me offhand whether my expectations are either over the market or under the market, and how I can advise my clients, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the right temp is being hired and also to offer the best quality of work during the assignment. When it comes to direct hire, the actual HR team manages that, because the actual employment liability will fall under my client with Stage 3, where they will have the actual individual to sign a contract with Stage 3, and then they will be enrolled with the Stage 3 medical benefits, and they'll have the same entitlement on a prorated basis as permanent staff.
Yeah, that's actually right. We actually have a very close connection with our candidates. Not only that, we WhatsApp them, we call them during special occasions, Valentine's Day, Christmas, every occasion. We also, during the pandemic time, we send WhatsApps to them, and some of them we even send them masks and make sure that they're okay, their family is okay. Essentially, they are our employees as well, so we look after our people. We've also launched our online timesheet last year. For some of you might have known, and we've invited them for an online timesheet event to make sure that they know how to submit their timesheets on a timely manner. So I think it is also the personal element that differentiates us from our competitors, that we have a regular catch-up, we meet them regularly, we treat them coffee, lunches regularly, just so that they are happy in their role. And if they're not, and if there are red flags, we also talk to the line managers to make sure that we have enough time to try to solve the problem. If not, we have enough time to find a replacement for the temp candidate. Yeah, so Ivan, you also mentioned that the entire process is shorter to hire a temp versus a perm. What is the standard approval process for temp?
So the good thing about Stage 3 is they've employed us to be the MSP provider. So therefore, there is a very, very well-defined process, and we have a VMS called Beeline to control the approval process. But I think overall, hiring temp requires less approval stages, even if you don't have MS or MSP program, because the consideration of hiring temp is not actually a cost for headcount, where you are hiring someone for without a definite date to the end of the employment, but you're looking for a fixed cost. So you can predict how much you're going to spend. So therefore, businesses, they don't spend much time looking into the actual financials, as long as they meet within the budget, and that will be fine. So the approval stage is definitely shorter than perm.
In terms of legal issues, I know that about 30% of our audience have not hired a contractor before. What would you advise in terms of the legal issues that a new hiring manager should be aware of before hiring a temp?
Yeah, I think a lot of misconceptions from the hiring manager's point of view, because they think that if they hire a temp, the temp might not be entitled to some of the employment benefits, or they might not be protected by the employment benefits of, let's say, the ordinances of Hong Kong. When they come to termination, they probably think they can let go of this person right away because they're temps. But the thing about Hong Kong is the labor law protects everyone. As long as they meet the minimal duration of employment, then they're protected. So I think, when it comes to the client side, you have to consider that you have to give at least the minimal entitlement to the worker. But of course, if you want to meet the industry practice, you best to speak to your recruiter, understand, okay, if I'm going into just pure labor law entitlement, what sort of candidates will I get? I think it comes to the theory of motivation. If you're paying peanuts, then you'll get people who are not as effective and not as motivated. But if you would like to add premium to it, additional entitlements, which probably will not cost you that much higher, then you will consider paying this person more annual leave entitlements, for example. MPF is still an element of the cost, of course, but it's something that you should consider as something like temp work will also be considered, entitled for. So you shouldn't look at a temp staff as someone who wouldn't be entitled as much as a permanent staff. That's not the case.
Okay. That's good to know. I know some organizations, they will use contractor as their temp's name. So if you log on, your name is contractor01, or if you log onto your phone, it's contractor01. And I've also shared some of my candidates have not got a very good experience with that. So it really depends on how the organization look at the candidate and how we manage the candidate. And it's very important to create a community within the organization, that they're not just the inferior candidates, they're just the candidates that will be let go very quickly during economic downturns. They're still a human being, and they're still a very valuable asset for our clients' organization. Yeah. In terms of temp to perm conversion, Ivan, what rate would you say is the typical temp to perm conversion? And
I can't speak for the entire market, but in State Street overall, when managers come to us for temp hires, they typically initially wanted to raise a permanent rec. But due to budget reasons, it wasn't approved. So therefore, they come to us and to hire temporary staff. So therefore, when temp staff commence, sometimes they impress the managers. Most often, they will probably develop into someone who's a better performer than some of the perm workers even. So the managers are really impressed with the performance. So they give that person a trial for 6 months in the mentality of trying and buying. So they will convert this person within a 6 months assignment or whenever they get a perm headcount approved. So they will extend that period of time of that worker's assignment until they get a perm headcount actually secured. So in State Street, I would say probably 80% of the temp staff in Hong Kong are for temp to perm conversion in the past.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's good to know. And during the current pandemic situation, why should candidates take on a temp role?
Well, I think it comes down to supply and demand. A lot of companies out there going through very tough challenges when it comes to costs, looking into ways to minimize costs, travel bans and all that. When it comes to perm hiring, there's definitely a board sort of decision as to, okay, let's stop all hiring right now. Let's re-strategize, how can we bring more value for individual workers? And then they'll consider hiring more people. So how do they spend this extra budget, and what does that budget look like? And what is your next sort of development in your business plan? It's all connected to the overall goals and achievements of the companies. But overall, I think many companies want to actually add new clients. They want to, for example, tap into new markets. And with those business growth, you need people realistically to sustain and uphold those sort of deliverables. So I think when it comes to a supply and demand sort of point of view, we will see more trends in temp hiring going forward when businesses are going through an uncertain period of time. So if, let's say, in an economy where there is less permanent positions available and candidates need to stay financially afloat, I think they'll come to a push factor where they have to take on a temporary position And I started to realize that actually there is a high demand for these positions. There is actually, it's not as bad as it seems. And I remember when I was a recruiter back in 2009, and there was a sensational boom of hiring of, let's say, secretaries or business support roles, where it's no revenue generating, but a lot of banks will consider those roles as critical to of course take away those burdens from, let's say, key decision makers. So I think that sort of trend will come in again, where business will look at temp roles as a role that is not necessarily a revenue generating role, but a role that's easily controlled by finance aspects of things, whereas a definite date, end date, start date to the assignment.
Okay, great. Now we've talked a lot about recruiting for temps and why we should hire temps and so on. Now I wanted to know more about the onboarding, offboarding, and management of temps. So in terms of the onboarding and offboarding, Ivan, what's your view in terms of the onboarding, offboarding temp staff in your organization?
Well, as I mentioned before in stage 3, when you're hiring a temp candidate, you would expect the candidate to be able to commence their assignment without having to clear the entire background check process. So therefore, they probably will be able to get into their assignment as a scheduled start date, so there will be no delay. If, let's say, for example, there is some special reason why that person cannot start due to technical issue or due to personal issues, then those are probably more ad hoc cases. But overall, the start dates are probably 90% accurate for stage 3.
And how do you retain the candidates to stay for the entire contract without moving on to a permanent role or moving on to another contract role?
But I think overall it's a candidate management piece. So when it comes to candidate management, it all comes down to vendor management as well. We have to ensure, suppliers like yourself, for example, are having a very good regular touch point or have a very good contractor care team to address issues or red flags. It could be a candidate doesn't feel the role is what they were interviewing for. It could be the case where the responsibility doesn't match what they thought it was. It could be the case of very long working hours, and those sort of things we rely on the supplier to tell us. We don't touch base with the workers individually unless it's absolutely necessary when it comes to performance management. But overall, I think it all comes down to individuals, where they really feel that the role is something that they want to continue working in to bring better success for their career. But I think when it comes to permanent offers out in the market, it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I think, given the market, if let's say a permanent role is out there and the individual looking for more stability, that would be the pull factor. But I think in recent years, we found that candidates in temp positions, they're not going to go to a perm role just because they're offering them probably a 5% hike, because, it is a risk.
Yeah, sure. And how's your experience with PageGroup so far? Having worked with us, having partnered with us for more than 6 years now.
I think overall the experience has been wonderful because I have a panel of suppliers that I work with, 5 in fact, and I think Page is one that actually stands out amongst the 5 because the contractor care part. I think when I have a candidate coming into the door, I wouldn't worry about whether they're being looked after or whether they have issues with their payroll, or whether there's something wrong with their annual leave entitlements or calculations and stuff like that. I've had these cases or these talks with suppliers in the past, different suppliers, but I haven't had that conversations with Page. And overall, when candidates coming for an interview from Page, we are probably most likely to expect that the candidate is well prepped, and also the candidate knows what the role is going to be. So there is no sort of surprises for us, for the manager, and also for Page. So I think overall, I'm happy.
Great, thank you, Ivan. For those of you who don't know, I didn't pay Ivan for this. I treated him dinner. So this slide summarizes why you guys should choose PageGroup if you haven't already done so. I'm sure you guys are some of our very close clients. We've got a dedicated online timesheet platform which we implemented last year. We invested a lot, so that helps to streamline the entire invoicing and payroll process. We've also got the biggest team in Hong Kong with 16 dedicated consultants in various disciplines, including technology, financial services, finance, legal, HR, and secretarial. We do all level, all disciplines, and we have a very strong pool of immediately available candidates. And having been in the market for 8 years, we've got a lot of candidate referrals, people who are happy to work on contract roles, or some of the candidates have actually been working for us for 3 or 4 contract positions, and we've got excellent reference checks from their previous line managers. And definitely, we've got a very dedicated customer service team and a dedicated finance team. So if there are any inquiries about the contractors' pay or clients' invoices, we have a dedicated team to answer all the questions. Yeah, so I think we are pretty much it. Ivan, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Not for now, thanks.
Perfect. I've seen that we've got a lot of questions. Tony, can we start answering some questions? And
sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, no problem. So as a reminder, we've got about 10 questions, and I think we should have some time to hopefully get through all of these. And you can also upvote any question if that's one you'd like to hear answered. So Angela, Ivan, you spoke about this in detail, about benefits for contractors, but let's reframe this question a little bit. They've asked, what do you think is a must-have benefits on the contract for contractors? So what would you say, just one thing maybe stands out that if you offer this, that'll make you more competitive to hire contractors?
Is it for Angela or for myself?
Why don't I give it over to you, Ivan?
Sure. I think what I've seen, because I've been working in both agency side as well as the client side, I think for Hong Kong candidates, they're really into the point of annual leave and sick leave entitlements and medical packages. So I think if you're offering someone with a good medical plan, that covers them in terms of inpatient, outpatient sort of entitlements, and also giving them a market standard annual leave, which should be about 15 days. The candidate will be happy with that because it rivals permanent benefits.
Definitely, I think the annual leave part is very important because all of you know that Hong Kong people love traveling. Given the current situation, we cannot travel, but I know that our contractors would definitely not take a contract role because of the annual leave. If it's only 7 days, just bare minimal, according to employment ordinance, a lot of the times candidates are not going to accept the offer. And most of our clients are not just offering 7 days. We are offering at least 15 days and so on. Some clients will be generous enough to offer same annual leave as the permanent candidates.
Right, got it. Annual leave is critical. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Angela. Let's say this next one for you, Angela. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to work with a variety of industries. So the question is, which industry is the easiest to attract contractors?
That's a very good question. I think definitely financial services industries, as well as the industry who has a very luxurious brand name. So a lot of the times when we're hiring contractors, they will go for the exposure of the company as well as the support that brings from the contract role. And like I said, because of a huge increase in demand for project hiring, some of the candidates would go for industries that will offer exposure in different projects, whether it's smaller firms, bigger firms, even startup firms. So I think it really depends on the candidate itself, but I would say definitely financial services, technology industry, the more cutting edge industry will attract candidates to take on a contract role, even without much benefits or salary is similar to a permanent role.
Okay, thank you. This next 2 questions I think are for you, Angela. So the related questions, being asked, comparing the Hong Kong temp market to, for example, the European contract market, and also a similar question about the interim market. And just before you answer this, Angela, the beauty of webinars, I was able to Google this very briefly, and it looks like in Europe, the average is about 14.3% of the workforce is temporary. So if you could give some comparison for Hong Kong.
Definitely. So one of our strongest contracting team is based in Europe, in France, where they've got 4,000 contractors. In Hong Kong, we've roughly about 500 contractors. Now you guys can see in terms of the size of the population. And I got the opportunity to talk to our senior managing director in France, and she mentioned that the reason is because of the employment law. So a lot of the times in Europe or in France, where a lot of the times they need to go for the flexible workforce or the contract arrangement just because they want to make sure that they don't pay out a lot if they have to make redundancies, it will be a lot tougher than just hiring a contractor. So hiring a permanent is a lot harder than hiring a contractor. I also think that in terms of the supply of candidates, people are more open-minded, and the contracting market in Europe, in the UK, have been there for at least 20 years. Compared to Hong Kong, we are just, during the last decade, we are here in terms of the contracting market. And comparing APAC and Europe, I would say Japan, Australia has a very strong contracting market as well. In Australia, we've got close to 2,000 contractors in michaelpage Australia. And in Japan, we've got about 1,000 as well. It really depends on the flexible workforce and also how easy that the population can accept the workforce arrangement. I think that over the past 5-6 years, Hong Kong contracting has definitely increased in demand. I also see that in China, it is hard to get a contracting license in China, and michaelpage has one contracting license in China. And from memory, I know that there are only 2 agencies that can work on contract roles in China, and we are one of them. So definitely there's a huge market in APAC. And with the current pandemic situation, I see that there will be an increasing demand in contract workers. And we're still hiring, by the way. If you have any good friends or family who wants to be in the recruitment industry, please let me know. I'm still hiring for my team.
Okay, always good to keep in mind. The most upvoted question at the moment is from Kate. Thank you, Kate. Completion bonuses seem common for contractors in tech. Are there any other firms offering this as a standard across other disciplines, for example, for EA or KYC roles?
I think this is part of the total package that we offer to candidates. Like Ivan suggested, annual leave, medical plan. Having a completion bonus will help to bound the candidate to complete the entire contract. So say if it's a 9-month contract, if it's a project-based hiring, and sometimes clients will come to us and say, hey, Angela, my candidate just left after 3 months because she got a permanent role. So in order to facilitate the candidate to work for the entire contract duration, 9 months, we definitely recommend our clients to pay a completion bonus towards the end of the contract. And you're right, Kate, we see a lot of tech companies or a tech contract role would opt for a completion bonus. But we are also seeing more and more firms offering for other disciplines such as secretarial, KYC, operations. The whole purpose is to keep the contractors to stay for the 9 months. Otherwise, it will be a hassle for the line managers to get an additional headcount for the remaining, say, 6 months or 4 months. I've seen that before. And also, to attract candidates who will be happy to take on a 4-month contract is a lot harder than to convince people to take on a longer term contract. Ivan, what do you think?
I agree. So I think those bonuses that are offered to roles that are in high demand, where there's a very niche sort of candidate pool. So to motivate your work to complete the entire assignment, then you want to do that. But in stage 3, we've only had probably 1 case where it's in the marketing department, and this individual is actually a very talented marketing individual, very senior in fact. So during the 1-year duration of the assignment, the business has decided to split the completion bonus in half. So when this person finishes the half a year assignment, then a bonus is given, and then the other half will be given towards the end of it. So the gratuity or completion bonus doesn't have to be towards the end of the contract, it can be also midway as well, but split in half.
Yeah. Tony, I think we've got time for 2 more questions.
Okay, we'll go in order of most upvoted then. Very often, people think about contracting temp positions are junior or mid-level roles. Have Page placed any contracting roles at the senior level? What's the role? Any challenges?
Definitely, that's a very good question. A lot of the people would think that contract or temp positions are mainly the lower end. Sometimes, just the secretarial, tea ladies, or data admin, data entry positions. I would say over the past years, things have changed. Like I said, the contracting market has evolved. So I have personally placed very senior levels up to 100K or up to $2 million per year. And these are more on the interim level, interim COO. I've previously placed one at a new startup company, and they're looking to have a license, so they need someone with experienced COO experience. It was for a 4 months contract, and it was a very challenging role, but I managed to find a candidate who has recently left the bank and she wanted to join a smaller company to gain more exposure. So that was a very good assignment, because the entire process was about 2 to 3 weeks. So you would imagine hiring a COO permanent role would take at least 2 to 3 months. But because of the urgency of the role and because it's a 4 month interim contract, so I managed to place it within 2 to 3 weeks time. Other areas that we've placed within our technology discipline, we've placed with a very international company in Hong Kong, and they were looking for project managers, Basel III project managers, and then they're looking for a Scrum Masters candidate as well. So I would say more on the senior level, I would say the interim, the technology, digital marketing, some of the senior financial accountants, some of the senior project managers for compliance, for regulatory exposure. So definitely, I think the market has shifted not just on the entry or middle level roles, but more on the mid-senior level. And because companies don't have the budget to hire senior roles, that's why they like to use contractors to replace some of the senior roles. We've also seen that some clients, they were trying to save costs by hiring contractors rather than permanent roles at the senior management levels. Another trend would be the sales roles. We haven't seen a lot of sales contract roles previously, but over the past 2 years, we've seen more and more sales try before you buy. If they can meet the sales target, they will then be converted into a permanent position.
Okay, great. Thank you, Angela. So I think this will be our last question. And if we didn't get the opportunity to answer your question today, please feel free to reach out later on. I'm sure Angela and her team and even Ivan would be happy to answer any inquiries you have. So the last question, which was the most upvoted at the moment, is how do you decide which agencies to use? What are the key attributes you look for? And why don't I pass this over to Ivan, since you've had a great deal of experience here.
Thanks for the question. It's a good question, in fact, because every year or every quarter we do a panel review to see the performance of each suppliers that we have, and also to see whether we need to bring in new suppliers or we take out any suppliers that we currently have. But I think ultimately it's a service quality. Are they diligent in offering the candidate? Are they diligent in managing the candidate's expectation and managing the candidate's satisfaction level and performances throughout the entire life cycle of the worker's contingent sort of journey? But I think what we look at as well is actually the infrastructure of the suppliers. How do they treat the data? But I think data is a massive key topic right now amongst many corporations, because they don't want to breach any data breaches. And they want to ensure that their suppliers are complied or they're aware of how to properly manage the data. When dealing with contractors, you're also dealing with their, the personal income, the personal data is involved. So data is actually something that we look into. Another thing is whether the supplier has the right infrastructure to cope with the demand of payrolling. Some suppliers, they have a very, remote location. Let's say in the Philippines, for example, where they're offering the payroll services to the entire population of contractors within the region. So as a client, although I cover the region, I'm going to the same person for payrolling. And that sometimes is great because it's the same point of contact, and the other is not so great because those lower cost centers, because they're managing a very large population of contractors, they may make mistakes, or they may even send out the wrong pay slips. And those are the things that we cannot take. There's zero tolerance for those mistakes. So we look at those things: contractor care, and also infrastructure, data management, and also making sure that extra administration are looked after.
Excellent. Thank you, Ivan. That was a very thorough answer. I believe that is all for today. I want to thank everyone for participating. I really appreciate you taking the time. I want to thank our speakers, Angela, and of course our guest speaker, Ivan. It was a really informative session. I hope that everyone found this information very useful, very practical. As a last reminder, when I close this session, your browser will be redirected to a Zoom page where if you click continue, you can fill out a brief survey. And as always, if you'd like to reach out to us afterwards, please do. Angela and the rest of the team will be happy to assist you. So thank you, and please have a good day.